Sometimes I am a conspiracy theorist, but I only believe in the conspiracy theories that are true. It turns out that a conspiracy theory is just something that was true 6 months before the media admitted it.
There's actually some truth behind that, but what Vice President JD Vance was reacting to were comments made about him by President Trump's White House chief of staff. Her name is Susie Wiles, if you're unfamiliar with her. And apparently she granted Vanity Fair, Christopher Whipple specifically at Vanity Fair, access to her for months. And he did a series of 11 interviews with her. And in those interviews, she shared her surprisingly candid views on various members of the Trump administration. Now, before we give you the dirty details, Cenk, your 2 cents.
Yeah, this was stunning on a couple of grounds. So first of all, her admissions were amazing. And secondly, why? Why did she say this stuff? Because the last time this happened was during Trump's first term, right about the same time was Steve Bannon. And he got fired and never got let back in. So I need you to listen to Anna tell you all the facts, because what she said is so true of all the different players. Then we'll come back and analyze why she did it.
Now, right off the bat, I'll say that she did defend Trump in various parts of this lengthy interview. So for instance, she's very much on board with striking Venezuelan fishing boats, is regurgitating the lie that they're drug traffickers and that what Trump is doing is totally legal, which I disagree with personally. But let's get to some of the statements that were made. So James Blair, who is Wiles's 36-year-old deputy chief of staff, also spoke to Vanity Fair and said of Wiles that she doesn't raise her voice, but she likes being around junkyard dogs. Indeed, Wiles has seemed content to let her pit bulls, deputy chiefs of staff Miller, Blair, and Dan Scavino, run loose as she watches. And in fact, she weighs in on how she has no interest in controlling Trump. She views it as unethical to do so. She doesn't say unethical or use that word in particular, but her argument is, well, the American people voted him in, and so who am I to rein him in when he's, carrying out the policies that he believes he ran on. Now, of course, he's reneged on much of his campaign promises, but nonetheless, here's what she had to say about Trump. She doesn't say that Trump is an alcoholic, so I want to be clear about that, because Trump was asked to weigh in on her statement here, and he's like, I'm not an alcoholic. That's not what she's saying, but here's what she did say. Some clinical psychologist that knows 1 million times more than I do will dispute what I'm going to say. But high-functioning alcoholics, or alcoholics in general, their personalities are exaggerated when they drink. And so I'm a little bit of an expert in big personalities. Trump has an alcoholic's personality. He operates with a view that there's nothing he can't do, nothing, zero, nothing. And he certainly carries himself that way. And she does have experience with alcoholics. The piece goes into her past and how her father was an alcoholic, but just giving you some context there. And Wiles's relationship with Trump almost ended at the Miami Golf Club one night in the fall of 2016. She weighs in on that. And I thought this story, this anecdote was really interesting. So apparently he was incredibly salty about how he was performing in the polls in Florida specifically. And so he decided to berate her in front of everyone. And so she says of that experience, it was a horrific hour plus at midnight, and I don't think I've seen him that angry since. He was ranting and raving. I didn't know whether to argue back or whether to be stoic. What I really wanted to do was cry. I finally said, Mr. Trump, if you want somebody to set their hair on fire and be crazy, I'm not your girl. But if you want to win this state, I am. It's your choice. And then she walked out. She walked out, and Trump allegedly turned on a dime. Lo and behold, he called me every day. Wiles never looked back. Trump carried Florida. So I thought that was really interesting. I think Trump, like many people, tends to react favorably to the individual he just berated if they're willing to walk away and say, you know what, forget it. He doesn't like people walking out on him. So I think that's what happened there. But what are your thoughts, Cenk?
Yeah, so that's a power play, and Trump is a guy, if you bow down to him, he doesn't respect you. He's total lizard brain, right? And so if you stand up to him, but without insulting him, then he respects you. And that's what Susie Wiles did, and that's how she got power. And I respect Susie Wiles. I think she's a smart strategist, but I am perplexed as to why she would tell all this to a reporter. In terms of the alcoholic personality, 100%. It doesn't mean he's an alcoholic. He doesn't drink at all. But does he think he can do anything he wants? Of course. I mean, look at what he's done his whole life. And so if you can't see that, you're really kind of blinded by your partisan bias. If you can't see that Trump has no boundaries at all, it's kind of like the Democrats who couldn't see that Joe Biden was old.
That's exactly right. That's absolutely right. In fact, let's talk a little bit about where Wiles clearly has disagreements with Trump. And to be sure, she does have disagreements, particularly when it comes to his tariffs policy, which was announced on so-called Liberation Day. So she said of that whole situation, so much thinking out loud is what I would call it, meaning the press conference for Liberation Day, where Trump is announcing the tariffs. There was a huge disagreement over whether tariffs were a good idea. And apparently she recruited Vice President JD Vance to try to like reel or rein Trump in when it came to these tariffs. She wanted him to tap the brakes. So there are some instances in which Wiles is willing to try to rein in Trump. But we told Donald Trump, hey, let's not talk about tariffs today. Let's wait until we have the team in complete unity and then we'll do it. But clearly that didn't work, and Trump moved forward with the Liberation Day tariffs, the so-called reciprocal tariffs from anywhere 10% to 100%, which triggered panic in the bond market and sell-off of stocks. Wiles believed a middle ground on tariffs would ultimately succeed, she said. But it's been more painful than I expected.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile is saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
So we're about to move on and talk a little bit about how she feels about the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files and Israel. But before we do, any thoughts on what she had to say about the tariffs policy, Cenk?
Yeah, so she's basically proving us right on every single thing we told you. Like the tariff policy, not supported by any rational person because he's made it so extreme. We told you, like if he did moderate tariffs like he did in the first term and he did them reciprocal and not these extreme tariffs, they would actually have some chance of working. But if you go ballistic like this, then it'll really rock the markets and it'll have no chance of working. Turns out his own chief of staff agreed with us 100%. And they all tried to rein him in, and they can't rein him in because he's a loose cannon, he's out of control. And does he understand the economic impact of tariffs? No. He barely understands economics at all. Like if you're a Trump supporter, you're in la la land on that and you think, oh no way, he went to war. I mean, he's a spoiled little brat. He hides his grades because he had no chance of getting into a good school. He never studied there. His grades were, I'm sure, abysmal. That's why he's hiding him. He doesn't know anything. He doesn't know the basics of economics. But what's interesting, guys, is you're seeing here in an honest, behind the scenes conversation, his entire staff agrees with us. And same thing happened in the first term, because they all think that, oh no, he's probably an act. And we get in there and he's gonna be strategic and stuff. No, it's not an act. I mean, I'll give Trump that. He's not acting, he really is that crazy and clueless.
That's exactly right. So let's talk a little bit about her view on the Trump administration's handling of the Epstein files and the ongoing genocide in Gaza carried out by Israel, of course. So she does see the failure to release the Epstein files as a huge debacle and a threat, a political threat to President Donald Trump, which I totally agree with. I mean, when you have members of your cabinet who spent years talking about how the Epstein files need to be released. When you have Trump on the record saying that he would release the Epstein files and then reneging as soon as he's elected and engaging in an obvious cover-up, yeah, that's gonna be a political liability, okay? So it doesn't take a genius to realize that. She does do the thing that a lot of Republican strategists love to do, which is place all the blame on Pam Bondi. And to be fair, Pam Bondi does deserve some of the blame because of the fact that she engaged in that ridiculous stunt with the binders. So she again trashed Pam Bondi's binder stunt. Now, when it comes to Israel specifically, some in the administration absolutely know that Trump is making all sorts of unpopular decisions. So a senior White House source told Vanity Fair that many see Trump as a, well, they didn't use this word, this is my word because I think it's an accurate way to describe it. But many see Trump as a cuck to Benjamin Netanyahu because he absolutely is. So here's what the senior White House official said. If you dive deeply into the internet, you'll find things that say, well, why don't we just put Bibi at the Resolute desk? Essentially saying, well, a foreign leader is the one who's calling the shots, so why don't we just have him in the Oval Office? And to be fair, Trump has had him in the Oval Office 5 or 6 times since the beginning of his second term, which is insane. Okay. In early October, Trump traveled to Israel to announce that his envoys had brokered a peace deal. We know that's not true, but he calls it a peace deal between Israel and Hamas. Now, during this triumphant appearance at Israel's Knesset, Trump praised Netanyahu and the Israeli armed forces with no mention of the Palestinian civilian casualties. And here's what Christopher Whipple reported about it. Trump had previously lauded Bibi's efforts in another action by calling him a war hero, a remark partially aimed at Israelis. Talking about it then, Wiles winced. I'm not sure he fully realizes, she said, that there's an audience here that doesn't love it. And I love to hear that. What do you think, Cenk?
Again, I'm blown away by the fact that she's saying exactly what we've been saying on air. And I feel good that from day one, I was like, Susie Wiles is very strategic. Remember, I don't agree with her policies, of course, right? But we told you that during the campaign. I said, watch out, she's smart, right? And she's formidable. And the walkout move that she did to Trump shows me exactly how smart and strategic she is. So again, none of that explains her telling this to a reporter, which I'm again stunned by. I do have one theory on it we'll get back to in a second. But in terms of Trump looking like a cuck, it's really important that she gets that information to Trump because he won't like it. And the problem is Trump is the exact kind of idiot who would shoot the messenger, right? So you never shoot the messenger, otherwise you'll never get a message. You'll never know what's happening on the ground, what's happening in the field. It's a terrible idea, but Trump will probably get mad at the person who tells him. But yeah, his half his base thinks he's kind of getting walked around on a dog leash by Netanyahu, and it's humiliating.
Yes,
and
it's humiliating for us. It's humiliating for, look, yeah, of course it's humiliating for Trump, but who cares? He's the one who's made the decision to engage in the cuckoldery, right? But not us, not the American people. We want to be led by the American leader, and that's not what's happening here. It's embarrassing to watch the US president get dog walked by a foreign leader. It doesn't matter who the foreign leader is, by the way. It's just that Israel is treated as, I don't know, above everything else that exists in life, and it's insane.
Yeah, I'll give them a little bit of credit because I don't think the people in the Biden White House knew how much Biden was hated because of how he was a dog to Israel. I don't think they ever got Biden that message, and Biden might have gotten even angrier than Trump at that message. And I think that the Democrats in the White House were maybe the most clueless people in the country. But here's Susie Wiles, chief of staff to Trump, and she gets it. She's like, yeah, this is humiliating. And Anna, I've now seen all over the internet people saying, I'm not MAGA anymore, I'm America first. And they're making that distinction because they're saying Trump is MAGA and Trump is not America first anymore, he's Israel first. And so they're abandoning MAGA because of that. I mean, again, she's right strategically, that could be a huge problem for them politically. But once you get into Washington, you get this Israel mind virus. must serve Israel at all costs. Even if it ruins your reputation, it ruins your career, and it costs you the election. It cost the Democrats the election, and they walked off the plank for Israel anyway.
Yeah, you're absolutely right about that. We'll end on her statements about JD Vance, which I also found incredibly fascinating. So when it comes to JD Vance, she says that his conversion from a never Trumper to a MAGA acolyte has been political, or she says sort of political. So the vice president, she added, has been a conspiracy theorist for a decade, which is what Vance was responding to in that clip that we showed you at the start of this story. So Vance had a different take, telling Vanity Fair that I realized that I actually liked him, meaning he realized, oh no, it turns out I actually do like Trump. I thought he was doing a lot of good things, and I thought that he was fundamentally the right person to save the country. Now, switching to being a Trump acolyte has worked out really well for JD Vance. And already, it seems as though JD Vance is the heir apparent in the next presidential race in terms of being the candidate. We'll see how that plays out. There's still an eternity from now till election day 2028. But I side with Susie Wiles on this. I do actually think that his reasons for supporting Trump were completely political. But aside from that, she made the argument that Marco Rubio came around genuinely, that you can't convince him to do something that goes against his values or his principles. I know, I disagree with her on that.
All right, we found something we disagree on. Okay, yeah. So look, JD Vance looks like he was created in a lab by Adam Thiel and Elon Musk. And so I don't know what he believes, and I don't think he knows what he believes until Thiel and Musk tell him. So are they going to side with Israel? Very, very, very likely. But is he going to pull the same cuck move that he does to them? I mean, he was born to cuck.
He will,
right? Because he was created by donors. So he's of the donors, by the donors, for the donors. So again, for the next election, we don't know what his opinions are going to be until they're told to him at that time. So for Susie Wiles, though, Anna, finally, to get back to this, why do they do this? And this one, I guess the theory is they talk to reporters, Susie Wiles and people like her, because they want to shape the narrative in their favor. But how, she's such a veteran and so savvy otherwise, how did she fall into the trap of saying obviously true things to a reporter on the record? I don't know why she did that. And
actually, you know what's interesting? Many of the interviews, because there were 11 interviews total, right? To basically get statements for her for this piece. And Whipple notes that many of the interviews took place on Sundays after church. And so I'm wondering if those sermons, persuaded her to just be super honest. I don't know, I'm just putting a guess out there. But she doesn't like the piece. I wanna be clear about that. It does come in 2 parts, and we'll include the link in the description box so you guys can check it out. But she says that significant context was disregarded, and much of what I and others said about the team and the president was left out of the story. I assume, after reading it, that this was done to paint an overwhelmingly chaotic and negative narrative about the president and our team. Actually, I disagree with that. I did not get the sense that there's chaos in the Trump administration. It felt way more chaotic in his first term. Now, I think he's significantly worse in his second term as opposed to his first term, especially since he's dragging the United States into wars that we shouldn't be involved in at all, period. But nonetheless, the take that I got was she seems to be pretty honest. And she even went after Elon Musk and the ending of USAID programs. She thought it was disastrous. So maybe she doesn't like the fact that she was too honest. But I appreciate it, and I didn't get the sense that things are chaotic. I got the sense that, unfortunately, right now, the Trump administration is a well-oiled machine that's carrying out incredibly damaging policies for the American people.
Yeah, and so, I don't think that it's chaotic at all. I think Susie, and it sounds weird that I keep agreeing with Susie Wiles. Again, not on the policy, guys. I respect her like I respected Dick Cheney. I think his agenda was terrible and evil, but he knew how to move the bureaucracy around. And I get the same sense from Susie Wiles. And your theory that Whipple was, the reporter here, was really smart and basically got confessionals from her from after she came out of church is an interesting one, but I don't know that that's why she did it. Look, I think that she'll probably survive this. They'll just say fake news a bunch of times. And there is one more thing that she's probably right about, but again, it doesn't really excuse it, because do reporters talk to you for hours and hours and hours and then take only the quotes that help their cause from that? Yes, it's happened to me many times. It happens all the time. So did she praise the Trump administration in a lot of ways that was left out of the story? I'm sure she did. I'm sure it was, right? Yeah. But again, if I know it, Susie Wiles should know it. She should be savvy enough to know that the guy's gonna take the most damaging things you say. And that's logical as a reporter. Those are the more interesting, fascinating, spectacular things that come out of this piece. So she should have known better.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.